Uh, in our last class, by the way, we welcome you to the class, but in our last class, we began with Ruth. Let's go back and just do a bit of reviewing there so we can come back up in the last two chapters of it. A man by the name of Elimelech and his wife Naomi left Israel and went to Moab because of a severe famine, and they took their two sons, and after they'd been there a while, the man died. His sons married two Moabite girls or women, Orpah and Ruth, and but after he dies and the sons die also, Naomi, the widow, is after about 10 years, she goes back to Israel, and her two daughters-in-law want to go with her. And she tells them not to. And Orpah went back with Naomi's blessings, but Ruth said, I'm not going. And that's where we had this famous quote, entreat me not to leave thee, nor to return from following after thee, and so forth, there in chapter 1, verses 16 and 17. So Naomi and Ruth come back to Israel, and they're well greeted. And Ruth finds a place to glean in the fields. This was the thing that the women did there. And gleaning means they would go in after the harvest after the workers were carrying it out or cutting the grain down and carrying it out. And then any that was dropped or pieces or grains of grain on the ground, they would pick up, and they could usually get something maybe in a day's time, about a half a bushel or whatever. Mm-hmm. But whatever it was, they did this. And then Ruth meets this man by the name of Boaz. In fact, it's in his field that she is gleaning, and he sees her, and he questions his servants about her. They tell him that she is the Moabitess woman that came back with Naomi. And of course, he knew the whole story of that, and he called her and talked to her and said, he said, you listen to me now, and you don't go into other fields and glean. You stay in my field, and you glean behind. And then he told his or his servants, those that were doing the work of harvesting, he said, don't you forbid her to glean, and you let her, don't you touch her, is the idea, and don't you keep her from any of the food and the water that she needs. And then he told his young servants to every now and then, and I'm paraphrasing a lot here, but he said, every now and then you let a sheaf fall and don't turn around and pick it up, and do it where she gets it. So he was a kinsman, a near kinsman of, he was a near kinsman of Naomi, and so he watched after this young girl, or I don't know how old Ruth was, but I call her a young girl. But he watched after her, and so she stayed. The last verse of 23, verse 23 of chapter 2 says, so she stayed close by the young women of Boaz to glean until the end of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest, and she dwelt with her mother-in-law. So up to this time, the account has been about Ruth and Naomi and Ruth and Boaz, that what Ruth was doing in the fields and so forth. But now when we come to chapter 3, where we will begin tonight, we find that this mother-in-law is going to take over, mainly because she knows the customs and the traditions of the area. She lived there. She's a Jewish woman, and she lived there. So she takes over the situation because she is determined, it would seem, that Ruth is going to marry Boaz. When I've studied this before, I've facetiously said, or lightly said, or whatever, that Naomi's just going to be a matchmaker. She's going to. She doesn't seem at this point to have any alternative other than taking care, making sure that her daughter-in-law is taken care of. She doesn't seem to have any thing that she wants for herself. She's going to get that, but there's no indication, at least to me, that she is trying to help her own cause by helping her daughter-in-law, although naturally, if her daughter-in-law is helped, it will help Naomi. But in chapter 3, then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, shall I not seek security for you, that it may be well with you?" So she now is taking over and actually becoming the one who's going to tell Ruth what to do. So she says, "Now Boaz, whose young women you were with, is he not our relative? In fact, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor." Now, how would she know that? I don't know, unless she was, we might say, being a nosy mother-in-law, they're trying to make a match. I use that phrase facetiously, of course, or lightly, but she is making plans. If the occasion arises for there to be a romance here, she is making plans for Ruth, that Ruth will know what to do, that she'll know the traditions of the area as to how things are done. Now, this next verse, in verse 3, I've heard this verse so, at least to me, so misapplied that I think it's almost a sin to, maybe a sin to apply it that way. But she says, "Therefore, wash yourself and anoint yourself, put on your best garment and go down to the threshing floor, but do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking." Now, I have heard, I mentioned that, I believe, the last class, I've heard at a lectureship, and I won't say where or when, that this, it was a lectureship of one of the churches in our country, but it was stated that Naomi was getting her dressed up and all of this so that she could seduce someone, and Boaz, as it would be here, that she could seduce him and have relations with him, and in a sense blackmail him. Well, that's just not in there. It's not there. And but she said, "Clean yourself up." She's been in the fields. Go take a bath. Put on your best clothes and anoint yourself with some oil or something, whatever it might be appealing to her. And then she said, "Go down to the threshing floor." And we talked about the threshing floor in our last lesson. It could be a place, something as small as this room, and maybe sometimes as big, perhaps, as a football field. I don't know. I know how they were in Korea, and they were generally maybe twice the size of this room. But anyway, she said, "You go in and you go down there, but don't make yourself known until he finishes eating and drinking. Then, after he's relaxed, it shall be when he lies down that you shall notice the place where he lies, and you shall go in and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what you should do." Now, this, according to different commentaries, this is a traditional way of doing things, and there are a lot of other traditions, Israeli or traditions of the area, that are involved here. the man, Boaz, would, probably because of the fact that he did not want his barley harvest where the grain was and so forth, didn't want people stealing it, he would probably sleep there. I know my son, Michael, he does a lot of wood cutting. That's his hobby. He cuts wood and he gives it away and he sells it to people who want it. And but there have been a couple of winters ago when it was kind of bad, he had to get in his truck and park down there where he stacks it because people was just coming in and stealing it. So yeah, but that happened, and it could have been the reason here.
What does this word winnow?
Okay, winnowing is the process of taking the grain. You know how the grain will come in something about the size of them. Like if you have wheat and oats or barley or something like that, the wheat stem comes up and it'll have, at the end of it, it'll have that where the grain is. And winnowing is to, after it's harvested or when it ripens, and they cut it down and they take it and they beat this on a hard surface. And those days, that's what they did. And they did the same thing with the rice crop in Korea when we were there, or when I was there. But it's the process of taking the wheat or the grain, the piece of grain or the grain out of that little place where it is, and the little, I guess I'd call it husk. It's separating it from the husk. It'd be just like taking an ear of corn and taking the shuck off of it, but it's not. You know, with the grain you do, or with the shuck you do that, or a corn you do that by hand. But with this, in those days they would use it and they would beat it, and then they would take a pitchfork or some sort of a thing, and they would pick all this chaff up. And they would throw it up into the wind. The wind would blow it away, but the grain would fall back down. And when they had done under that enough, that's called winnowing, by the way. When they would throw this up and the chaff would be blown away and the grain would fall to the ground, and then they would rake this up, or however they picked it up. But he would be there winnowing for that day, and then that night he would eat and go to sleep. So she said, then it shall be when he lies down, that you shall notice the place where he lies, and you shall go in and uncover his feet. Notice it's his feet, not she doesn't crawl into the bed with him, but she lies at his feet. You go in and cover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what you should do. Now, some writers that I've read say this, especially this is in the sense of the law of Moses, where if a man marries a woman and he dies, then the man's brother has the responsibility of taking her for his wife and having a son by his brother's wife, so that his brother's name will not be cast or not be left out of Israel. And this is one of the processes. Ruth would be very familiar with it. I mean, Naomi would be very familiar with this, and so Ruth listens to her, and she says, and in verse 5, Ruth said to her, all that you say to me, I will do. So Ruth is not going down there for some unholy or some immoral purpose. And as we'll see, she does what her mother-in-law tells her, and we see the outcome of it, that it's a very beautiful picture, and it's an extremely moral picture. So after verse 7, verse 6, so she went down to the threshing floor and did according to all that her mother-in-law instructed her. And after Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was cheerful, that's, you know how that is. You get a have a good meal and good cup of coffee or whatever you like to drink, tea, and you're pretty comfortable. Go get in your easy chair, and it doesn't take you long till you're sawing logs, as they say. And I know it doesn't me at my age, but she went in and she came in softly. In other words, not to awaken him. She uncovered his feet and lay down. And the implication here is that she didn't lay down beside him, but she lay down at his feet. And the next verse tells us that. Now, when it happened at midnight that the man was startled and turned himself, and there was a woman lying where? At his feet. She was doing that just like it. Really, this almost, it's not exactly a proposal, but it is the woman telling the near kinsman that you need to take your responsibility that your law says you to take. That when a person's, her husband was a Jew, or he was a Hebrew, he was an Israelite. And since she is now a widow, she has the right to expect, I'm talking about Ruth, has the right to expect the near kinsman of either, well, it would better if it's Chilion or Mahan, or whatever his name was, the two sons, whichever one she was married to, they were both dead, and Ruth had the right to expect their kin to take her as their wife, and then so that she could conceive and bring a son or a child that would carry her first husband's name.
So when you lie at someone's feet, then is that for that purpose, or are you doing it to make a request, or what's the purpose of?
That's a good question. I think that you hit it. I think Naomi knew what the process was, and she knew what would. She said, when he discovers you there, he will tell you what to do. So it was the point of making or letting Boaz know. It wasn't forcing him to do anything, but it was a point of letting Boaz know that you have a responsibility, and I'm asking you to fulfill that responsibility. It's not exactly a proposal, but it's just simply saying that you're an honorable man, I'm an honorable woman. I'm letting you know that you need to do something about your responsibility. And rather than being offensive to Boaz, it cheered his heart. So he said, "Who are you?" It's verse 9. So she answered, "I am Ruth, your maidservant. Take your maidservant under your wing, for you are a close relative." Now that taking under the wing is take your responsibility. You have a responsibility. You are a near kinsman. You have a responsibility. Boaz admits in the next two verses or so that I am a near kinsman, and but there's someone before me that's even more near kin than I am, and it's his responsibility. But if he doesn't want to take this responsibility, then I assure you that I will. That's what he says. And I paraphrase that, but now let's read it. Then he said, "Blessed are you of the Lord, my daughter, for you have shown more kindness at the end than at the beginning, in that you did not go after young men, whether poor or rich." Now he's going to tell that he knows what all that she has done, how she's treated her mother-in-law, and how she's been good to her. And so he now, the thing has been, she's done what Naomi told her to do, and she said, he will tell you where to go from there. And that gets us down to verse 11. So he says, now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you request. For all the people of my town know that you are a virtuous woman. So there's nothing uncommon. There's nothing vulgar. There's nothing here that has any way that people could make comments like this person I talked about a while ago made. And it just seems like it's almost a proposal, or it is Ruth, at the instruction of her mother-in-law, telling Boaz, I'm a widow of some of your kinsmen, and take me under your wing. In other words, fulfill your responsibility to me. And he's surprised. He says, you've shown more kindness at the end than at the beginning, and that you did not go after the young men, whether rich or poor. That she wasn't somebody out chasing around after a husband. She simply wanted him to take his responsibility. Actually, she did not. She knew nothing about this, as far as I am concerned. She knew nothing about all the procedure till Naomi told her what to do, and she did it. And Naomi was right. So he says in verse 12, now it is true that I am a close relative. However, there's a relative closer than I. And now to protect her reputation and so forth, he says, stay this night, and in the morning it shall be that he will, if he will perform the duty of a close relative for you, good, let him do it. But if he does not want to perform the duty for you, then I will perform the duty. And as the Lord lives, lie down until morning. And so she lay at his feet. So he lays back down. This is a midnight occurrence, or about midnight occurrence. And so he lays back down to go to sleep. She gets back at his feet, and she stays there until the morning. And she arose before one could recognize one another. Then he said, do not let it be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. Now, whether he's saying that to her, or maybe some of the servants that were already awake, or whatever, he says, this is not something that we want to spread just yet. And then he told her, bring me the shawl that is on you and hold it. And when she held it, he measured 6 ephahs of barley and laid it on her. Then she went into the city. Now, that would be for the purpose of people not, there was nothing that happened that anybody could have bad words about or gossip about. Mm-hmm. But we know how it is a lot of times when young people do things, even if they're just being friendly and enjoy one another's company, there's gossip about it. And Boaz didn't want any gossip, so he says, bring the shawl and hold it. He poured in this barley, and it was there. She probably put it on her head. That's the way they carried things there. When first time I went to Africa, and also in Korea, I saw people, women, little girls that didn't seem like they would be strong enough to do anything, put a 5-gallon can of water or gasoline on their head and walk swinging their arms, not even holding it. They walk it with it and are able to balance it. But he says, do this, and it was in case somebody saw her leaving, they would think that she was just an early person to the threshing floor and to get some barley. So when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, is that you, my daughter? Then she told her all that the man had done for her. Now, there are at least two thoughts on Naomi's question. One thought is, she's saying that Naomi, it was still dark and Naomi couldn't see who it was. And so she asked, is that you, my daughter, which would be for Ruth. But there is another thought that I think may carry more weight, because it's not logical that other women or other girls or at that time of the morning would be coming there, knowing where Ruth was and knowing what she had gone for. Naomi would be expecting her to come. Is that you, my daughter? Are you here, my daughter, in shame or rebellion because, or fact that he did not offer to do anything? Or are you here as one that Boaz will do what he promises he will do? And when she did that, then she told her, that is, Ruth told her all that the man had done for her. And then she said, the 6 ephahs of barley he gave me, for he said to me, do not go away empty-handed to your mother-in-law. And then she said, this is Naomi, she's still in charge here. Sit still, my daughter, until you know how the matter will turn out. For the man will not rest until he has concluded the matter this day. So the stage does Boaz take her? Does the other near kinsman redeem her? Is there going to be a marriage? Naomi has done all of the fixings, I guess you'd say, to get it where she, where the situation would be decent, it would be morally good, it would be for the purpose of getting a near kinsman to take his responsibility. And if he does take his responsibility, if he's allowed to, it will give this young woman, or this woman, Ruth, a husband that she can be happy with, and she would still have her mother-in-law. I believe in this case, I believe very firmly that Naomi is wanting to do something for this daughter-in-law of hers. This daughter-in-law has said, where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your God will be my God. Your people will be my people. And there'll be nothing but death to separate us. Even after she is married to Boaz, which she will be, Naomi is still in the picture. So I see, first of all, I see the hand of God in this, because it's just, it is so beautiful that this thing, they went into a foreign country, never expecting to come back, but and while there, the husband and the sons died, and the 2 husbands of the girls died, and now we have 3 widows. And what would happen to them? Well, Orpah went back to her family, and she made no such vow as that Naomi's God would be her God, and she probably went back to her Moabitist type of religion, which would be either Chemosh or I forget what the other one was, but anyway, they were idolatrous gods, and these idolatrous gods demanded or human sacrifice. So for the children would be passed through the fire, so to speak. I think we'll read about that some more when we get into 1st and 2nd Kings along in that area. But this sets the stage for Boaz. Now it's in his hands. As we sometimes say, the ball is in his court. What does he do? So he went up to the gate. This is chapter 4. He went up to the gate and sat down there, and behold, the close relative of whom Boaz had spoken came by. Now, when you read in the Bible and in ancient history, the cities many times had walls around them, and there was a rather intricate gate type of entrance. It was built that way to keep a bunch of soldiers from charging and overcoming it, because they'd have to come in and then they'd have to turn one way and then turn the other and so forth. And it was a rather large area. I know the gate at the old fort of Megiddo was about the size of this room, and where you'd come to this point, you'd come through the first gate and you'd zigzag through that, and then you'd come to this room, and then at the end of that room, you'd go take a left and you'd go up into the old fort. But here in this room is where a lot of business was taken care of. Contracts were made, and there'd be people selling stuff probably, but there was a marketplace as well as a place for meeting leaders of the city and so on. So when Boaz goes there, he sees the close relative, and he says, "Come on, come aside, my friend or friend, and sit down." So he came aside and sat down. Then he, that is Boaz, took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, "Sit down." So they sat down. Now, he wasn't commanding them, he was asking them. And there was a transaction, a legal transaction that was about to take place. At least it was hoped that it would. And there would be witnesses to this. And they didn't have a lot of the things that we have, affidavits and all this kind of stuff. They did it with witnesses. So they sat down, and then he said to the close relative. Now, he's saying this in the ears of the close relative and the 10 men. He said to the close relative, "Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, sold the piece of land which belonged to our brother Elimelech. I thought to inform you, saying, buy back in the presence of the inhabitants and the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not redeem it, then tell me, and that I may know, for there is no one but you to redeem it, and I am next to you." Now, Ruth could not, or Naomi could not ask, or nor could Ruth, that Boaz redeem it if there was another closer relative. And we know that how that goes in wills and so forth. And so he finds this near kinsman, a little one. I guess it'd be something like a first cousin, second cousin. I don't know.
I was going to ask you what was the I mean, what was the relation? Was it like a cousin, a brother, or?
All we know is that that Naomi and Elimelech, it seems like Elimelech was perhaps a brother or a cousin to our brother Elimelech. And then Elimelech died, and his sons would take over. And then when they died, it came to Naomi. And in order to, when it came to Naomi, then since a woman could not, in most cases there, a woman could not own property and so forth, she would be under obligation to marry or to have the next ranking male in the family. The closest one. I don't mean ranking as far as rich, poor, and so on, the next closest male in the family to, she would be more or less obligated to let him take over. And of course, he would take care of her, whether he married her or whatever, but he would be obligated to take care of her. But now with Ruth in the picture, then the person who takes over is going to be obligated to marry Ruth, to bring seed or a son or something from the one which was her husband. I haven't figured out yet which one married which. There's Orpah and Ruth, and there's Mahon and Chilion, and there are comments in different places, but there's nothing that really tells you.
I was just wondering what the relative was. I mean, whether it was like for Boaz or this other person, this other kinsman, was he a cousin or?
We don't know. He could have been an older brother. Of course, the older brother would have first shot at it, so to speak, or it could be in the realm of cousins, and the oldest, a second cousin, first cousin, or an older first cousin, and then the next older first cousin. That was it went by legally by that type of arrangement, and this evidently. The fellow that he is not named, the writer does not give us the name of the near kinsman. One commentator said it's maybe because he didn't want to bring shame to the man, that he didn't want to fulfill his responsibility in taking care of Naomi or of Ruth. So anyway, that's the arrangement. So Boaz says, I thought to inform you, saying, buy it back. It's there. It's your responsibility. And he tells this man this in the presence of all these witnesses. And he says, now, if you want to redeem it, I would encourage you, or at least I would say to you, redeem it. It's yours. It's your responsibility. If you want to do that, then get it done, because they're in need of getting this done. And if you will not redeem, then tell me, that I may know, for there is no one but you to redeem it, and I am next to you. If you don't want to, and this means buying all the property, or redeeming all the property that including the wife, the mother-in-law, or whatever that was there, that Naomi had, it would be redeeming all of that. So he says, the close relative says in verse 6, let me see. In verse 4, he says, I will redeem it. Okay. Well, you can almost see Boaz's feathers sort of droop a little bit, because he's got his desire now to have this have Ruth as his wife, but he since the older or the closer relative says that I will redeem it, Boaz can't make him not redeem it. So he uses a little psychology here, and this is some of the things I think that this story here is so much like human nature, and so much like good moral people working together. But he says, well, now remember this, and I'm going to paraphrase some of it here. I'm in verse 5. Now remember this, close relative, whatever your name is, and he would have known. The day that you buy the field, that's from the hand of Naomi, you must also buy it from Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead. Now, this fellow would have known what that meant. If you buy it, you have to fulfill this responsibility to the wife of the dead, our dead relative. You have to fulfill that levirate, or whatever it's called, vow, that you must take her to be your wife, and you must have relations with her to bring forth a son, And then that son his name will remain, and he will be the one that later, when you die, he will take it over. So he said, Boaz said that when you do that, to the day that you do so, you're going to have to marry, or you're going to have to take Ruth for your wife to perpetuate the name of the dead through his inheritance. Well, that puts a different light on the man who is the first one, the close relative. We don't know a thing in the world about him. Does he already have a wife? We don't know. Does he already have enough land to do him? And what would he do with his other? We just don't know, and it's not important that we know when you get right down to it. But he says, I cannot redeem it. If I can just see him pondering this, that if it's nothing more than buying Naomi's property that she has and taking care of her, and even perhaps taking care of her daughter-in-law, we can do that. I'll buy it back. Well, I will buy it. I'll redeem it. But now, if I've got to have a wife, if I've got to have her for my wife, again, I don't know if he'd been married or not, but if he buys it, he has the responsibility by the law of Moses to marry Ruth and raise up seed from her, or through her, for her dead husband. So he says, you redeem it, or you redeem my right of redemption for yourself. I cannot redeem it. Now, what reasons he had, we are not told, but it's worked out just like Naomi, and I think Ruth and Boaz wanted it to. It's here, whether this is the workings of God in it, when the
I was gonna say God's providence.
yeah, providence or something, we aren't told. I think we can look at the Bible and find places where we see God's providence in their life. I think that I can go back in my life and see where the very sure or very good possibility of the providence of God, the working of providence of God in my life, but I can't teach that. I can't prove that. Well, here it seems we have the proof here that at least things are working like they were supposed to. Now it says in verse 7, this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging to confirm anything. One man took off his sandal and gave it to the other, and this was a confirmation in Israel. Well, now what do? We sign an affidavit. We have our ways, or sometimes in the Old West, many, according to historians, many deals where buying 10,000 cattle or whatever, it was done on a handshake. The man promised to pay this much, and the man promised that that's how many cows I've got out there, and they sealed the deal by a handshake and witnesses to it. And so that this is something similar. It's just a different thing that they have. So he took off his sandal. One man took off his sandal and gave it. That was the tradition, or that was the thing to confirm. Therefore, the close relative said to Boaz, "Buy it for yourself." So he took off his sandal. Now, let me ask you a question. Does it make any difference which one took off the sandal? In this what we've read here? And did which one in verse 8, therefore the close relative said to Boaz, "Buy it for yourself." So he, now which he, Boaz or the close relative? He took off his sandal.
I would say Boaz.
I think Boaz is probably right, but there's argument. You know, it's not really a big issue, but
So we
Sometimes,
follow, but it seemed like they followed a certain procedure, certain,
but
protocol.
some people just like to argue about things like this, John. Yeah, they like to argue. Something the other day, just quite frequently, and something that we college kids, so when we were college people, I wasn't a kid when I was there, but after during breaks in class, we'd go down and get us a Coke or something, and we'd sit down and argue whether Adam had a belly button or not. And people just, they like to argue about things. I don't know which one did what. I don't know if it was a close relative or
Yeah.
it looks like from the pronoun and the closest antecedent is Boaz. But I don't, whether it is Boaz here or whether it is a close relative. Anyway, whichever it was, the deal was settled, and then Boaz said to the elders of all the people, "You are witnesses this day that I have bought all that was Amalek's and all that was Chilion's and Mahon's or Mahlon's from the hand of Naomi. I have bought all of this. I have redeemed it."
So that right there, Sherry, I mean, the whole thing is this redeeming, and now we get to the point now someone has to take a shoe off.
Yeah.
So why would the topic of discussion and the qualifications change? So they're having a conversation. So evidently, they know at this point, this is the process. At this point,
Right.
You take,
And I don't want to. I want to. I'm fighting myself not to do it, but like Hillary said, what difference does it make which shoe who took the shoe off, and so on. But the fact is, as you said, it is a national custom. It's a thing that, like you, if we go to court, we have to. If we're going to be a witness, well, this is their procedure, and the witnesses that were there accepted it, and it would be a legal binding deal, so to speak. So verse 10 says that, and moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the widow of Mahlon, I have acquired as my wife to perpetuate the name of the dead through his inheritance, that the name of the dead may not be cut off from among his brethren and from his position at the gate. You are witnesses of this. So this is a legal procedure that is taking place, and so it's a binding thing. Well, now Naomi told Ruth in verse 11 of chapter 3, "And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you request," or that Boaz told her that. And then Naomi told her that you just sit still. Verse 18, "You sit still, my daughter, until you know how the matter will turn out, for the man will not rest until he has concluded the matter this day." That's the day she was sleeping at his feet the night before, and this morning when she came home in the dusky dark, so to speak, this day. So now Boaz does not waste any by Ruth saying, "Take your maidservant under your wing." She's saying, "I'm asking you to fulfill the responsibility to you, that you have to me as the widow of one of your kinsmen." You have that, and it's. I think by this time I'm telling an opinion, and when I give an opinion, you can accept it or you can reject it. My opinion does not override the word of God at any time ever. But it is my opinion that they had both already, even in the gleaning and so forth, that they had learned to like one another and appreciate one another. Boaz evidently had checked, and he says this young woman is a very virtuous young woman, or she's a very virtuous woman. And I think that both of them, or all three of them, were anxious. Naomi, anyway, and Boaz and Ruth both acquiesced to it, we might say. But then in verse 11, we find some interesting things. And all the people who were at the gate and the elders said, "We are witnesses. The Lord make the woman who is coming to your house like Rachel and Leah, the two who built the house of Israel, and may you prosper in Ephrathah." That is a name which to be famous in Bethlehem. Micah prophesied in the Old Testament that the Savior or the Messiah would come. He would be born in Bethlehem of Ephrathah. My tongue gets tied on it, but I read today that the Ephrathah was the old name, and the new name is Bethlehem. So whether that's true or not, I don't know. I've been to Bethlehem, but I don't. I didn't delve into that kind of stuff.
So now, with Boaz being the near kinsman now, or he took on the responsibility, he bought all the land.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to take on Ruth, and he's also obligated to take care of Naomi as well. So
well, Ruth, which whether he would be or not, although he would be, because she is the near kinsman's mother, and the men were responsible for taking care of the women, the older women and the younger women. So it would naturally fall on him. But with his personality and his goodness and righteousness, he would naturally want to do that. And, there'd be no problem. So it is as we said at the beginning, it's a very beautiful story. Well, these people say, we want your house to be fruitful. May your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring which the Lord will give you from this young woman. And there she is called a young woman. How young, I don't know. But these elders know something about the history of Israel. If you remember that Tamar bore Perez to Judah. Judah had his sons. If you read it over back in the book of Genesis, Tamar was supposed to be Judah's daughter-in-law, but the son died, and or whatever, and I'd have to go back and refresh my memory on it. But she had tried to get Judah to fulfill his responsibility, and I'm probably getting some things mixed up here because it's been a long time since I've been back there. But anyway, Tamar sat by he told her to, called her some right unsavory names or so forth. And he told her that after having relations with him, he wouldn't take her. He told her that she was unworthy, so she took some of his clothing, and while he was evidently a drunken stupor, or at least while he was there, and then she left, and then she went on the wayside out there, and knowing where he would come, and some of Judah's people told him that his daughter-in-law was out there, and she was dressed like a harlot. He was very to her, and when he was going to her to commit sexual acts, Tamar made herself known to him again and said, I am pregnant by the man whose garments these are. And they were Judah's garments, and he said, you've been more righteous than I. And it's a good story to read, but it's, it's got some things that, there's some very plain stuff in the Old Testament that nowadays we don't think a whole lot of it, but there were, back when we were kids, we didn't talk about those things. We just didn't, because that was not in our style. But anyway, they were making a blessing and pronouncing a blessing. May your house, that is the house of Boaz, be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring which the Lord will give you from this young woman. What offspring is going to come from this young woman? Well, we're about to be told. But did we bring out in the beginning in Joshua about when we began this class about I think we did 4 women that are mentioned, 4 women that are mentioned by name in the lineage of Jesus. There was Rahab, and there was Tamar, and there was Ruth, and there was Bathsheba. She's not mentioned by name, but that's 4 of them, and they were all in the lineage of Christ, and they're listed in Matthew chapter 1. So it's an interesting thing. But anyway, verse 13. We're coming to the close of this. Now we have sort of a genealogy type thing. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And he went into her. The Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. So they, the husband and wife, they have sexual relationships. She conceives, and she bears a son. Now we go back to Naomi and the women of the town. Then the women said to Naomi, blessed be the Lord who has not left you this day without a close relative, and may his name be famous in Israel. And may he be to you a restorer of life, a nourisher of your old age, for your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is better to you than 7 sons has been born, or 7 sons has borne him. Now, what was it that when Naomi came back to Israel and the women called her, what does the word Naomi mean? We wrote it down. Pleasantness, or and
I just know about the other name she used.
But
Mara,
but which meant bitterness. Yeah, it means bitterness. That she was bitter, and I guess it was pleasant. So, but now when she came back, she said, "Don't call me pleasant. Call me Mara. Call me bitter." Did she have a right to be bitter?
No.
Well,
I can understand.
Looking from a human standpoint,
I understand it.
She lost. She was away.
Yeah.
She was taken out of her country and from her kinfolk. Whether that was forced or not, probably was not forced. But while down in Moab, she lost her husband. She lost her 2 sons, and and there's no way that she could get married again because it just wouldn't hardly be possible. But now, through her daughter-in-law, they said this son is he'll be famous, and he's to you. May he be to you a restorer of life. What happens? Do you have 11 grandchildren, or 10 grandchildren, 11 great grandchildren? You know what no, you don't know if you don't have what's it like for your son to get married and have a son? This is not on the lesson, and you may want to, those that are watching it on the archive may want to just run it across fast, but I saw my first grandson, well, this grandson of Mike and Janine, our children, that daughter or son and daughter-in-law. I saw him in December when he was born, and then later that about maybe a week later or even less, I got the news that my oldest son had been killed in an automobile accident. And you can imagine what that does to a person. But anyway, Mike and Janine didn't live too far from us. And as Martin was growing, as he was still a baby, they would find excuses to bring him over and let us babysit him because they knew that we needed him. And we needed something and someone to love because we'd lost that. And there is a restoring business to this. It restored me. In fact, my wife and I, we'd lost a child, our first child with leukemia. We lost our second one in the automobile accident, and we just almost said we're not going to love anybody anymore, because anything that we love or everything we love is something happens to it. But this little boy restored us to the love that we needed to have and that we did have. And I see that in this. Maybe that's one of my reasons I like this book, because there's a personal interest in it to me. So it says in verse 16 that Naomi took the child and laid him in her bosom. And you know what that means. She took him and held him and hugged him and all of this stuff. And the neighbor and became a nurse to him. In other words, she is going to be the one to raise him. Like Pharaoh's daughter was the nurse to Moses. She took him and raised him. Then Naomi took the child, laid him in her bosom, and became nurse to him. Also, the neighbor women gave him the name, saying, "This is the son born to Naomi," and they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse. He is the king. When you really come down to it, he is the king that God made the promises through, pretty much. In fact, in 2 Samuel, we'll get to that when we come to that point, but in 2 Samuel 7 and 12, God told David through Nathan that when you sleep with your fathers, I'm going to raise one up from your loins, of your seed. And he's going to build an everlasting kingdom. It's going to be a kingdom that will not be restored or destroyed. And it's going to be those people that this king is going to be the savior of. And that's not a direct quote, but you can read it in 2 Samuel 7 and 12. And this became known, and we're going to talk about this more when we get there too, but this became known as the sure mercies of David. And David is mentioned in Peter's sermon on the day of Pentecost. But David was that one. There was Abraham, and then there was David, and then there was Christ. But there were many in between that. But these three are the ones that are mentioned in Abraham's seed and the seed of David, where it'll be David's kingdom. So This is the generation or genealogy of Perez. Perez begot Hezron. Hezron begot Ram. Ram begot Aminadab. Aminadab begot Nahshon. Nahshon begot Salmon. Salmon begot Boaz. And Boaz begot Obed. Obed begot Jesse. And Jesse David. Now, in the genealogy, it's either of Luke or of Jesus, of Matthew, that we're told that Nahshon begot Salmon of Rahab.
Oh, okay.
So Salmon, I guess, would be the mother of Rahab. Some traditions have it that Joshua married her, but I don't. I have never read that one way or the other. But in the genealogy, it tells us that Salmon is the father of Boaz, and Salmon was the wife of his wife was Rahab. But anyway, here we have it. You see the seed line: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, and then we come on through to some others, and then we come through to David, and then we go to Solomon, then we go to Rehoboam, and then I'll come on through in the Old Testament. Finally, Zechariah. But anyway, we come through, and then we're told, and Mary or Jesus and Joseph and Mary, and the writer tells us of whom it is said that Joseph was his. But this is in the midst of all the fighting and all of the ungodliness and unfaithfulness in the book of Judges, and this book was taken these things took place in the time of the Judges, but in the midst of all this, somewhere there's a group of people that are still trying to follow God and trying to serve God, and we find a beautiful love story and love scene, marriage scene taking place back here in this. And we're going to leave this, and we're going to go into 1 Samuel and their ungodliness. And so it's just a beautiful oasis to me. When my wife and I are reading, we were made a sort of a commitment that all this year we're going to read 9 chapters in the Bible a day. If you read 9 chapters a day for 30 days, you can read the New Testament in a month. We've already done that. Now she's reading she started in Genesis, and I started in 1 Samuel and started reading. But there's a lot of morbid type things because of the sins of the people. It was not God's thing, or was not His doing to bring out something as morbid as all this, but it was the people and their idolatry, and we've seen in the Judges how they come up and they go on a level for a while, and then they go back down in the valley of sin and idolatry, and then and right in the midst of all this, you have the oasis of Ruth. And I encourage mothers to sit with their daughters and read the book of Ruth. And I encourage those ladies who teach young ladies to read or study, make a study of the book of Ruth and see that you can have decent, wonderful, godly love without all of the filth and stuff that you hear of on TV, even in the good shows, so to speak.
Yeah.
So this
You know,
is the book of Ruth.
That's crazy when you talk about television. They just had a live version of Grease. And in the original movie, there were some lyrics in the song that were suggestive.
Yeah.
So in the live version, they changed those lyrics because they say it's a family-oriented show. However, in other shows, you can say the S word, you can say this word,
Yeah.
and that word,
Yeah.
and that's prime time television, and they're not censored. So it's like it's hypocritical.
Yeah. Well, you know, in talking about morals, and I think with the book of Ruth, it's certainly permissible and necessary to talk about morals, that I have to do something. I enjoy being on or going on Facebook and reading what people have to say. But I have recently unfriended people that I have known for years, some of them kinfolks, because I have put a notice in there, if you use profanity or any vulgar or suggestive language, I don't care if you're just passing something on to me, I don't want it, and if you do it, if it's a mistake, I'll write you about it, and you can apologize, and I'll let it go. But if you just did it and it makes no difference to you, I'm going to unfriend you, and I've unfriended 2 in the last 3 weeks because I just don't want. I mean, I'm old enough. I'm 82 years old. It doesn't appeal to me in some immoral way, but it's just filth. I recall, and I'm not killing time here, but I think we can learn some lessons here by some illustrations. I was lived in Hobbs, New Mexico, and rode over to Roswell one Sunday afternoon with a couple who were preaching on television. And on our way back, we stopped at a little store to get some. Well, they didn't have Pringles in those days, but to get get a snack and a drink of some kind. And while we were in there, there was this man, just for no reason at all, he was just using such filthy language. And this preacher went and stood right in front of him, one of them did, and said, "Sir, will you please keep your mouth shut?" Said, you've said things in here that it will take me all day to remove from my thinking, and I don't want it. So would you please just shut up? And the man, very embarrassed, he walked out. But I've thought about that a many times. Sometimes you just have to tell people, I don't want that in my house. I've never allowed cursing or vulgarity or dirty jokes in my house, and I don't intend to start. And through the television or through Facebook. But I think what we can learn from this is we have, in the midst of an evil and vile world of that day, we have this oasis that's out there coming out of the desert and darkness of that. We have this beautiful book about a romance, about some sadness in the families, but how that turned and worked out to the fact that this book, the information or the events of this book blesses our life even today, because this last part, when it says Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David, and David
You know, when you
was
look
in the
at it,
seed line of Christ.
it's not happenstance. It's something that had to happen.
Yes.
So you see God's providence and God's guidance in the whole thing.
Yeah.
It had to happen.
Yeah.
If it didn't happen, we wouldn't have the Messiah.
That's true. And this just takes us way back there. We're going to come into some more of that. In fact, Jude he sent the nation of Israel, the northern kingdom. He sent them into Assyrian captivity in 722 BC or 2122 BC. And in 586, he sent Judah into captivity because he said, I'm going to put them out of my sight. But here, I believe God approves what took place in this book. Book of Ruth. Okay, now, let me explain to you what I'm going to do. I'm going to meet next week with you. I think I told you that. But then we have what we call test week, and I don't have any students that I know of, but none have ever contacted me. So I don't have any students online right now. And so I won't be giving tests, but it's test week, and there's one reason I can't come next week because Mike, my son, drives out here for me, and of course he teaches, and he will be in Nigeria. He's leaving to go to Nigeria for 2-3 weeks to teach in a preacher training school over there, and so there would be no need for me to come. Plus the fact if I came, I would have to drive out in the daytime and spend the night and go back the next morning. But I don't drive at night anymore. I'm 82 years old, and I have sense enough to know that I don't have the reflexes with all the lights and everything around me that I can drive from my house to Walmart and this kind of stuff, but not on this interstate. I mean, touch it.
So you said there won't be any class next week?
There will be a class next week.
There will be next week.
There will be, and then we will stop. We're going to study the first 7 chapters of 1 Samuel. If we'll get as far as we can in next week. We've got about 20-25 minutes here tonight, and then we'll use the rest of the time for next week to get through 1 Samuel chapter 7. If we get up to it and have some time left, we will review chapter 8, but that's all. We'll just give it a review and then come back the next week and go through chapter 8.
So next week is going to be the last week?
Next week will be the last week till the first week in March. Yeah. Okay, you ready for 1 Samuel? Okay. 1 Samuel is a transition. It's a book of transition. What have the people, from the time of the Garden of Eden up till now, and I'm talking about now where we are, who has been the people's prime leader or king? That's not a trick question.
Oh,
God.
God has.
God has.
Then it
He
never
chose
changed yet.
Moses. He chose Noah to build the ark. He chose Moses to lead the people out of Egypt and so forth. But God is still the one in charge.
Right.
And we're going to come, when we get to chapter 8 of this, the people have become so wicked, and the priesthood has become so wicked, and the king, well, not just yet, but they've become so wicked that they want a king. We want a king like the nations round about us. We want to be like the nations round about us. And that is, Samuel was very upset about that. And God said, don't worry about it, Samuel. They have not rejected you. They have rejected me for being king over. They want a king? We'll give them a king.
And then he had the king performing the functions of the priest.
Yeah, we're going to study about that. And so, but this is the transition. We're going from a theocracy, which means a religion with God as the head, to a monarchy, where man, now the monarchy could be divine, but the ones that we have are not going to be divine. We don't get a divine one until Jesus ascends back to the Father and is seated on David's throne at the right hand of God. But this is a transition period, and I'm going to tell you in the beginning. Our text, starting the 1st of March, it will be from 1 Samuel 8 through all the way through 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, 2 Kings, 1 Chronicles, and 2 Chronicles. We'll have 12 weeks to do that. There's absolutely no way that we can cover all. We can either hit the valleys or we can hit the mountain peaks. And that's it. It's just, when I have taught this, I've taught this in India, and I have had 24 weeks to do it, and even then it taxed my time to do it. But I'm just letting you know. So I'm going to encourage you, and if we have any students for online for next time, I'm going to encourage them to read this material, because we will not be able to look at all of it. We're going to hit the high spots. We're going to hit what things that I have chosen to teach, because I think they teach lessons. And there will be other lessons that need to be taught that I'm just not going to have time to deal with. So that's the what we have before us. So we start out chapter 1, verse 1. Now there was a certain man of Ramathaim, Zophim, of the mountains of Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, an Ephraimite. I never cease to wonder how or why the parents named their children what they did. But then again, I don't know why some people name their children what they do now.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, it's some of these, Brother Turner, under whom I studied in the prophets and so forth, he would tell us at the beginning of a quarter or something, or a semester, he'd say, now boys, he always called us boys. He said, now boys, if you can pronounce these names that are in here, then as I try to pronounce them, I will, if you know how to pronounce them, that I will look, foolish in your eyes, because I probably mispronounce. But he said, if you don't know how to pronounce them, you will marvel at my ability to do so. And we'd of course, that was a joke, and we'd all get a good laugh, hoping for a better grade, I suppose. Elkanah, let's call him Elkanah, had two wives. The name of one was Hannah, and the name of the other was Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. Now, we see, first of all, that this man was a polygamist, that he had more than one wife. Do you know who it was who had the first person who had two wives?
Jacob.
No. Back before that.
Oh, yeah.
Go back to the book of Genesis. Just take it on.
Am I Abraham or?
No, it's further back than that. So go back and look. It will. If you look it up, you'll remember it. So anyway, he had two wives. This man did. Hannah was one of them. Peninnah was the other. And this man, that is Elkanah, went up from his city, that is from the Ramathaim Zophim, he went up from his city yearly to worship and sacrifice to the Lord of hosts at Shiloh. Now, what was at Shiloh by this time? We saw it in the book of Judges, and we saw it also in the book of Joshua. Shiloh was where the temple, or not the temple, but the tabernacle was. And that he would go up to Shiloh, and also the two sons of Eli. Now, Eli is the high priest. He is a descendant of Aaron, the brother of Moses. They go to Shiloh, and the sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, the priest of the Lord, were there. And whenever the time came for Elkanah to make an offering, he would give portions of, or to Peninnah, his wife, and to her, all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah, he would give a double portion, for he loved Hannah, although the Lord had closed her womb. And her rival also provoked her severely to make her miserable, because the Lord had closed her womb. So it was year by year, when she went up to the house of the Lord, that she, that is Peninnah, provoked Hannah. Therefore she wept and did not eat. We see in this, I would think, one of the reasons not to have polygamy. Here's one wife that can have children, and the other can't. Now, I know we live in a time when abortion is practiced and is even made a law. But women that really want to follow God, God told Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden when that they were to be productive and repopulate, or to populate the world. And from that time on, women have been bearing children, and men have been begetting children in marriage, and sometimes not in marriage, but it's supposed to be in marriage. And I know in my lifetime, when I grew up, it was a wonderful thing for a young girl to get married, and then that news that might come along 6 or 8 months later, and they didn't use the word pregnant. I'm in an interesting condition.
Mhm.
And
That's what they said?
yeah,
No. But they didn't say
even
expecting?
when my sister became with child, she'd been married for probably a year and a half before they had a child. But she came and told Mother, I'm in an interesting condition. She wouldn't say the word pregnant, because it wasn't nice for some reason. And anyway, Hannah couldn't have a child. God had forbidden that, or he had not allowed it up to a point. Maybe it was because God knew what was coming, and he let this other woman, the other wife, have sons and daughters. And this other wife, Peninnah, she just was on Hannah's back all the time. She persecuted her. Remember how Hagar, when she had Ishmael, persecuted Sarah because she didn't have any children, and then Isaac was born.
Mhm.
Then
No, Ishmael was my age. Oh, that was later, after he was born. Okay.
but Ishmael was from Abraham through
Hagar, right.
Hagar, yeah.
Mhm.
So anyway, this time when they go up to Shiloh to worship, so Hannah won't eat anything. She is weeping. Then Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? And why is your heart grieved? Am I not better to you than 10 sons? Here is a man that doesn't know what he's talking about, even though he is very sympathetic and very loving. 10 sons or a husband or a companion can't take the place of children who want children. Couples who want children. I love my wife. She loves me. We've been married for 15, well, we married in 1957, I guess that's 59 years. And in March, we'll hit 59 anyway. But I love her more than I loved her the day I married her. And I think she's the same way about me. In fact, I know she is. But the thing that we wanted as we were dating and after we got married, that we want to have children. And we want to have them early so that we can rear them, get them out of the way, love them, but then we can spend our mid-years together doing what we want, and then when we'll feel more like doing it. And that's what we did. But Hannah wanted children. And this other woman was just, I don't know, I'm just really spitefully saying, you can just hear, I've got sons and daughters, and you don't have any children. My husband loves me because I give him children, and you can't give him children.
But and then what's her name?
Penina.
Penina, I'm pronouncing it Penina.
Penina.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, she probably knew that Elkanah was favoring Hannah over
Probably
her.
so.
So that could be what.
I think she was being mean. I think probably you're right in that she knew that Elkanah loved Hannah, so she was being as mean to Hannah as she could be. And I think he probably loved her. That is, Penina. I think he probably Elkanah probably loved her. He took her for a wife. But anyway, in verse 9, so Hannah arose after they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh. Now Eli the priest was sitting on a seat by the doorpost of the tabernacle of the Lord. And here was Hannah, and she was in bitterness of soul and prayed to the Lord and wept in anguish. Now here, evidently, all the way from Ephraim up to Shiloh, this Penina had really razzed her about, I'm going with my husband with children. You don't have you have a husband, but you don't have any children. And you can imagine how that would affect Hannah. So she, in bitterness, prayed to the Lord and wept in anguish. Then she made a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your maidservant, and remember me, and not forget your maidservant, but will give your maidservant a male child, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall come upon his head. He will be a Nazarite. This is what she's saying here. And it happened as she continued praying before the Lord that Eli watched her mouth. Now Hannah spoke in her heart, only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought she was drunk. So Eli said to her, How long will you be drunk? Put your wine away from you. And Hannah answered and said, No, my Lord. I am a woman of sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor intoxicating drink, but have poured out my soul before the Lord. Now, I want to stop here. I don't know how much you may know about that stuff of that movement back in the 1974 and 75 and further, called Crossroadism.
Yeah.
Well, I lived in Gainesville during those years, and I knew the elders of the Crossroads Church. We knew one another by name. Well, I won't say we were close friends, but we knew one another. But I heard one of those elders in went to a lecture by him. We're invited, all the churches were invited. He was going to explain why they believed and why they used women in leadership roles in Protestantism. And he used this passage to say that here we know that a woman can pray in public because Hannah was praying in public. Yeah, that's the look you gave me is the look I gave an elder that was with me from the church where I preached. You can't be serious. That fella can't be serious to use this. Yes, she was praying, but she wasn't leading in prayer.
Right.
And so on. But that was, when you're looking, when you decide you want to do something that is not found in the Bible, what you do is you find a place, you decide what you want to do, and then you find a place in the Bible that may indicate it can be done, and you make that a doctrine. That's just like those who make the doctrine of salvation by faith only, all you have to do is believe. That's the doctrine they make on Acts 16:31, when Paul and Silas told the Philippian jailer, when he said, "What must I do to be saved?" He said, "Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ and you shall be saved." That's all there is. There it is, right there down. And you see that sign on the little pieces of wood all through the south.
Like Acts 22:16, they forget the beginning of that passage, and just say, "Call upon the name of the Lord." Well, what was he doing previous to the end of that statement?
Yeah. What he did is he did that. He called on the name of the Lord by doing what the Lord told him to do. And
but they leave that part out.
Oh yeah.
And another thing, in our lesson here with Hannah, this is where the denominational world developed baby christening.
Yeah.
Where you dedicate, the baby.
But again, that doctrine didn't come around till about the 3rd or 4th century of our period, the Christian dispensation. That it came about as Catholicism.
Yeah.
But anyway, she said, I'm not drunk. Do not, verse 16, do not consider your maidservant a wicked woman, for out of the abundance of my complaint and grief I have spoken until now. Then Eli answered her and said, go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition which you have asked him. Now here is the way I take this, and I think the way it is meant to be taken, is Eli is saying, whatever you've asked for, I'm asking God to grant that to you. And he in a sense, is asking God to grant her petition that you will give me a son. So in verse 18, and she said, let your maidservant find favor in your sight. So the woman went her way and ate, and her face was no longer sad. She has been told, you are going to have a child. You prayed for a child, and God is going to answer your prayer. So it's 19 minutes after. Got a little late start, but we are at a stopping place that will be good to stop. Let's start here, and then we will finish up through chapter 7 next week. And then we'll have a week off, and then we'll come back for the next quarter. Y'all have already enrolled on that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the date said March 15th and 17th on that form. Some of them.
Well, I'll have to we'll have to check with
yeah.
because
I thought that was
I haven't looked, but I didn't know it.
Yeah, I can. We can confirm it, but that's what it had on that form.